Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Law Firms and Finance Show. And today we have a great guest because we are talking about something that every law firm should be considering, and that is how secure is your data, your information, and really, do you have the right protections against internet crimes? Now, what we know is that there's so much data coming into our business. There is so much that we are handling that belongs to our clients. There's sensitive data. And the question is, are you properly protected? Well, if you've been wondering that question, you want to stay tuned for today's show because we have a great guest and we're going to dive into that topic. Stay tuned. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest. Dylan, how are you today?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome. Well, it is a pleasure to finally connect to have you on the show. Now, you and I, we connected on LinkedIn, and I want to talk about this a little bit more because I was very impressed by the way that you connected, considering I get a ton of connection requests every day, mostly people trying to sell something. So I was very impressed by the way you connected. But for those that aren't familiar with you, can you share a little bit about your background?
Sure. I am a thoughtful guy. I get grief about this a lot because a lot of people don't want to go into that, the why of the things they do. They like the what. They like seeing lists of features. And I get into the why. I ask hard questions about, like, what do you really want? What is important to you? And what I realized over the course of my career is I started in that technical space. I moved into that management space. And what I realized was that a lot of businesses are being poorly served by the security industry because most of what we do, most of the cyber tech world or most of the audit world are focused on delivering legal defensibility and compliance. And because the criminal attack methods and the strategies that are effective move a bit faster than legal precedent gets established, those end up being two different sets of things. If you want compliance, I got a lot of referrals. If you want effective crime defense, we focus on delivering that.
Nice. You know what? I love that because I think so many people just are unprepared for, how to even protect themselves. Some people, they don't even understand the level of, risk exposure that they have when it comes to internet crime. So I guess,
Sure.
How did you even get into this field?
I came up through the Fortune 500 route, and it was just something I felt strongly and passionately about. If you have been the victim of internet crime, there's a pretty decent chance that the funds you lost ended up funding North Korea's nuclear weapon program. A lot of people don't realize that, and they do not. They think about it from their angle, and I'm about protecting people from getting their business ended.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. So one of the things that I think about is, when it comes down to internet crime, so many, law firms are handling tons of, their own data, tons of data for clients and stuff. So, if you were talking to a law firm of just trying to help them put in perspective, like, what are the possible types of internet crimes that they can be exposed to? What would be some of the ones that come to mind?
There's two for most law firms, and your listeners probably have a good sense of which apply to them. Number one is trust account disbursements. So if you do this little thought experiment, what would happen if your firm was tricked into dispersing funds from a trust account to a criminal and could not recover it? And what would happen to you?
Wow.
So if that is scary, like podcast isn't over. We'll probably talk about some things you can do, but there's some great options. The second major one is losing client data, and for some people this doesn't matter. I mean, if you're a bankruptcy lawyer, like everything you file is public anyway. But commercial law, especially, if everything about a matter that your firm maintained was stolen and sold to an unscrupulous party, what would happen? What would happen to you?
Wow. That's very interesting to think about because, you know, you know, not that you want to be so pessimistic and down in the dump, but I mean, it is something to consider because, it's happened to probably far too many people that have been unprepared for a situation like that. So I guess, without giving us, any legal advice or specific advice,
Sure.
are there any kind of like general things that you usually see like, hey, if to, I guess, protect yourself, some general kind of coverage, or hey, what are some best practices of things they can
Mhm.
do to make that less likely of something that happens to them?
Sure. So let's start with the why. Like, what's in it for criminals? They're mostly after money, like or secrets they can turn into money. Um, so they're going to do this in two ways. One, they're going to try to impersonate you, or they're going to impersonate your staff. They're going to impersonate your client, your opposing counsel, their clients, any sort of trusted business relationship where there's something of value being exchanged. They're going to try to get in the middle and take it. And the second major way is they're going to go after your systems. They're going to try to trick your systems. And there's way too many ways to trick systems for us to get into detail here. And honestly, none of you guys should take the time to get into that detail. You delegate that stuff. But within those two methods, there are three easy ways to address them, both like strategies that you can take now that'll keep working even as the particulars of the security industry and that cat and mouse game change. One of them, probably the initial one, and I think you'll appreciate this, is just process. Think about what are the risky activities your firm does. We talked about trust account disbursements. We talked about client files. Firms have a bunch. You think about M&A attorneys, and you think about just commercial litigation. There are some sensitive actions that people in a firm take. Identify them and think about how can you change them to make them resistant to a criminal getting in and tricking people. And then how do you make sure that the changes you make continue? And how do you govern them? How do you make them consistent? Because it'll be 6 months from now when you're not thinking about it, that change you made is going to be important.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so when it comes down to, internet crimes, I mean, I guess, for the average person, they're probably thinking that, oh, we don't have to worry about that because, we use the business version of Microsoft, or hey, we have the business version of Google, or a Google Workspace, so they manage that, or hey, we're using this law practice management software. They have their own security team. Like, do you feel like people having that mindset leaves them to be more vulnerable, or are they justified in relying on those bigger companies and their security measures?
Well, I think it's both. There is certainly a lot of tech detail that's relevant there, but one of the biggest misconceptions of the security industry is that you can fix it with tech. I mean, honestly, for any of us, When was the last time you had a big problem, like a meaningful risk, and you were able to mostly fix it with tech? For most of us, like, process is a good chunk, training is a good chunk, governance, making sure people are still doing things the right way, is a good chunk. Now they need a platform, but and there are important parts of that, but people often want a one and done solution, and so they buy like a box that lights up and blinks, and they put it on their shelf and they feel good. Or like some sort of antivirus thing that, like, hasn't worked since 2007. Most of the risk today is not technical.
Gotcha. And that's an interesting thing because I mean, I guess when that reality sets in for people, whereas because I tell people even from a finance standpoint, like, the technology you implement isn't going to make your business profitable. All it's going to do is highlight your underlying processes. So if you have some bad underlying processes, the software is just going to make it more visible. And it's just going to make it visible faster. So, when you talk about, having processes in place, or you talk about training, like, do you have any thoughts or have you seen any best practices on like how frequently people should be, reviewing their training, whether it's for themselves or for their staff, on like, hey, here are the security protocols we need to have in place?
A lot of compliance people say yearly. I think it should be more frequent than that. If this sort of risk is a meaningful possibility for your business, and that's often law firms. I mean, think about a manufacturer. You make, like, I don't know, copper pipes or something. You got inventory. Okay, your biggest risk is ransomware because your plant's going to shut down. You can't ship product. Okay, a cyber policy is probably going to make you whole as long as you can get back going again, and in time to like fulfill the orders you committed before people like leave. You're going to be fine. But if trust is your major currency in your business, like for commercial law practices, or even, fractional CFOs, like, you probably depend quite a bit on trust. Once trust is damaged, that can be a big revenue loss going forward, and no policy is going to fix that. I'm a big fan of like the continuous improvement approach, and as opposed to like the capitalized, like, let's do a big project every 5 years. Often continuous improvement and just like thinking, well, what's the next right thing for us to do, ends up yielding much better long-term results than the visualizing and trying to achieve utopia approach.
I think that makes a really good point because as you were thinking, one of the things that came to mind and is, for any problem that is a huge risk to your livelihood, if someone told you like, hey, you're only going to get training on this once a year, most people would probably be like, that's probably not enough.
Right.
But first,
so this is one of the best things you can do, and this is actually where I and compliance programs overlap, is phishing programs. And if you do this right, you can gamify it and like stand up the winning department at like the company picnic and give them extra popsicles. Like, it doesn't cost a lot, but you phish them, you send them criminal messages, and you see who falls for them. And and when they fall for them, they have to watch some dumb video about like phishing prevention. And honestly, like, they're not going to pay attention to the video, but they're going to care, and they're going to go on the leaderboard, and Peggy is going to give them grief about it for dragging the score down. And that's what you want.
That is pretty funny. I mean, funny but effective because, I think to what you're saying is that it kind of changes the culture, especially when it becomes a common conversation among the team. I can really see that, really taking on a point where people really are looking out for phishing emails because I mean, even like last week, or no, it was 2 weeks ago. I got an email about a conference that I'm speaking at, and they were asking about, they were going to plan on scheduling the travel dates. And, within 2 days, I got this email of like, hey, we're ready to book your travel bookings. What are your arrival dates and stuff? And so I emailed them back and put my arrival dates. And I was like, you know what? Something about that doesn't seem right. So I emailed the organizer and said, hey, did you guys send the email from such and such platform? They're like, no, that's probably a scam or something. And I'm just like, man, had I not like just had some like something seems off about this. And then what was funny is the next email they reply back is, hey, we need your address and all this other. I'm like,
and they're going to ask for your bank account number next. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing with email is it is so easy to get tricked over email. Like if your email gets broken into, someone can really effectively impersonate you because they can go look at your past history and how you've interacted with someone before, right? So managing partner's email gets broken into, they can see how this person authorizes large transactions. And they can go ask the office manager in exactly the same way. And they can keep deleting the responses from the office manager so the managing partner doesn't even see any of it.
wow.
And so a lot of what we do, I mean, it sounds kind of techie. Some people might say it's techie, but just if you stop using email for sensitive or risky activity, like maybe you put all your everything in under attorney-client privilege in the practice management software, like some of them, Clio, best case have great client portals. And you just keep it out of email, man, that helps a ton. Or any sort of cost approvals or finance approvals do not go through email. They go through your finance platform.
Gotcha. That's a very important one because I've had to tell a couple clients, like when they've been hiring and they reach out to us like, hey, can we help set this employee up? And they'll say, hey, I'll send you their application. I was like, no, do not put that in email. I'm like, you do not want to put their personal information in email. I'm like, if need be, I'll pick up the phone and call you to get it before I want you to put their social security number and email in. And I think for so many people, it's just like they look at the convenience of email and they're just like, oh yeah, I'll just send it. And I think we forget about the level of risk that come with that.
I think a lot of the times we just don't talk about it. I mean, have a heart for the poor security industry. They have been blamed for all the problems. Like you give sales credit for everything right that happens, and security blame for everything wrong that happens. And why are you surprised when the security department always says no? And this culture has embodied like the defensibility approach. And I think like stepping forward and giving people better solutions that work for them is kind of a new idea for a lot of security folks. They're a lot happier in that engineering, encryption, and network stuff that honestly is a very small segment of your risk.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that I'm also curious about is when it comes down to a lot of these new applications that pop up, because you mentioned about, for law firms, like Clio has really good practice or client portal. So when it comes down to a lot of these newer platforms that come out, whether it's an application, they're doing some type of integration. Do you have any thoughts on like, how do you even know if that's a secure platform, or how do you even know like which ones are safe and which ones are not?
Yeah. Well, the first one, don't roll your own, right? Like if you have a choice between using an online portal and like a server in your basement, do the online one, because IT is a discipline of a million details done right, and like you're never going to be good as like the Clio IT team at right protecting it. But how, like you asked a really good question. How do you detect the difference in strength between products, online products? And this is hard. To someone who knows what they're, who's been around the block a bunch, it's not hard, but like, so I got, but how do you deliver that insight at scale? I have 3 ways. One, just Google them, like put the name of the company and then breach. And if you see like 3 events in the news, that's bad. It happens more often than you think. Second, there are free like vendor lookup tools, and they'll scan everything about a company, and they'll keep updated on all the bad stuff that just happened last week, and they will test that company against all the bad stuff, and they'll give you like a rating or a grade for that company. There are 2 security scorecard and risk recon have free tiers. I have a better sense of the accuracy of security scorecard. Both of these companies, like you should not take this at face value, take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes they get stuff wrong, but it like that can get you really far. And then the third way is look up if they have a bug bounty program on what is it? Just Google like bug bounty and the name of the company, and if they have one, that's a really good sign too.
Okay, awesome. Well, definitely thank you for the insight. Now, for people who are like, what, all right, I'm just concerned. I need some help. Like, I want someone who has experience to help me kind of navigate and look at this. So, if someone's looking for that type of service or that type of consult or support, where is a good place for them to find you online?
Sure. So we stop internet crime. Yep, there's our website. We have, because we care about stopping crime, for businesses who are going to be ended by it, we created a service for them, a one-time thing. So for about maybe a firm of 10, it might take 2 hours of your time, and it explains how worried you should be and what you should do about it in non-technical, strategic ways. No nerds required. Because we like you guys, we'll give 2,000 off for listeners who sign up in the next month. Just mention Terrell in the intake. That's the checkup service. Link will be in the description. You can cut that. We also provide for larger firms ongoing like strategy and risk advisory in a much deeper, much more metric heavy way, providing leaders and advisors to the degree they want in kind of an ongoing engagement.
Nice. Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, one final question I love asking every guest that comes on is, let's say you're having a conversation with someone and, you tell them, hey, I was on the Law Firm and Finance show with Terrell Turner, and hey, you should go back and listen to the conversation I had with Terrell. And hey, here are 2 big takeaways you should leave with that conversation. So what would your 2 big takeaways you would tell people to listen for?
For people who depend on trust, internet crime is a bigger risk than you think. It's underreported. And the second thing, it's easier to solve than most people make it out to be. It doesn't have to be technical. Some solid process design, some solid alerts, some good delegation will get you really far.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. And for those that are listening, can you repeat your website one more time?
simple-salt.com.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure having you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Darrell.